It's 6:30.
And then all the funding for that would be Ukraine.
Hey, Paul, you want to do the pledge again?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, call to order the March 14th, 2023 regular city council meeting. Liz, will you do roll call?
Councilman Nichols is there.
Councilman Abarca,
Present.
Councilman Jackson, Councilman Duran,
Here.
Councilman James,
Here.
Councilman Feinstein,
Here.
Mayor Head.
Here. Prior to the meeting, Mr. Jackson had given me notice several months ago that he was going to be gone for this meeting. I would entertain a motion to excuse or unexcuse his absence.
So move for exclusion. Second.
Motion by Councilman Havorka, seconded by Councilman James.
For exclusion?
For exclusion, not execution. Any further discussion? There's going to be a delay, so I left for a second.
No.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. On to item number 1, the consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move. Second.
Okay, motion by Councilman James, seconded by Councilman Havorka. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Number 2, approval of the agenda. Entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Councilman James, seconded by Councilman Havorka. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. On to number 4, city manager report. Peter.
Well, I guess you've received my report. A few things here that have come up since. And I think I mentioned this in a previous email, but very pleased at the $1.5 million grant award that was provided through the Housing Innovation Grant that we applied for. That was a full award, by the way, and that's going to be used for infrastructure at the site, at the 8th Street redevelopment site. We're awaiting news yet on confirmation of our transformational housing grant. We applied for another $5 million. Hopefully in 30 to 45 days we'll have some news on that. We released a request for qualification for a general contractor last week, so that's been advertised, and we've gotten that out to probably another 6 developers with that kind of experience stitching those kind of properties together, those housing units. We also, Marlon has been deep in the plans on this thing, and we've gotten a pretty good set of architectural plans, and that's in front of you. You can see the new roof line that's been put on those units. We also have an updated site plan that I think Marlon's going to be communicating several changes, if he hasn't already, to EV Studios. So we're in the process of trying to nail down the plans. And as you recall, this $1.5 million that we have received has to be spent before April of 2024, which for us means we have to spend it in 2023 and complete that horizontal infrastructure for that project. Also, on a different subject, Chris Nichols, Shannon, and I sit in on Megan Lukens and Senator Roberts' sponsored bill. The title of that bill is Assessing Advanced Energy Solutions. That was about an hour-long conversation today. The bill would require that the Colorado Energy Office would assess different forms of energy like geothermal, nuclear, natural gas with carbon capture, that sort of thing, and determine its affordable and feasible nature using also existing infrastructure like substations, transmission lines, and the bill doesn't necessarily mention power plant infrastructure, but I asked that question in the chat room. I'm sure we'll get an answer to that at some point, but that's one of the items that I think we would be nice to see if, like, for instance, small modular reactors could utilize some of that infrastructure out there before it's demised. I think you got an email from me on GEM 2. That's that greenhouse gas emissions and energy management that's threatening several industries, but it includes in Rio Blanco County the natural soda mine and processing facility, which is substantial. If you've been up through that facility, it's an amazing site, and that baking soda that you buy with Arm & Hammer's stamp on it, that's the kind of stuff they produce there. And it comes out of the ground at that purity once out of solution. So it's quite a project. We also had a meeting last week with the Ferguson Group. City Council, Shannon and I sat in on that. We talked about the projects, the 6 projects. Shannon and I talked about schools, transportation, housing, and the industrial site, and possible grants that they might help us, or funding that they might help pursue to sustain those entities. And I think that's about it for the additional items I wanted to talk about. Any questions on those items?
Our 6 that we presented to the Ferguson Group, how did they react to those?
They had a pretty good discussion. They had some recommendations on things that they might pursue. I think we tried to push it towards a few projects like the pump hydro project, rehabbing or retooling the power plant. We also talked about the water line, the south water line, for potential benefits to the airport, golf course, Lowdy Simpson Park, and future housing development at, say, Thompson Hill and some of those places. We talked about schools. We talked about quite a few of the things that we brought up in that meeting the other day. They thought that there might be some opportunities there, but we also mentioned that the school district needed to complete an updated master plan so that they could work with that. So it was kind of a 1-hour informational back and forth with some Q&A.
Peter, what was their reaction to the event center proposal from?
That was actually pretty good. They thought that there was some opportunities there. And it sounds like the site location, I was always thinking the fairgrounds, but they're also looking at the potential of Lowdy Simpson Park to locate that event center. But probably just because there's more space out there.
It'd be interesting to sort out what would be a good place, just in my council in other places I've been, it's nice to have it near hotel rooms. But,
Tom, I think that's one of the deficiencies of all of our asks. We're not very far into the planning process. And we explained to them that for a small community to spend $500,000 on planning and just put it on the shelf, that's a difficult thing to do when you're looking at revenues that we have. But
I wouldn't say, down on the riverfront is another priority that we've already started a lot of things down there. So an event center in that location really would.
Well, and that south water line would come in very handy if we had potable water to the south side of the river for those projects. And that was another point that was brought up on the event center being at that location. So it was, I thought it was decent. What did you?
Good. Yeah, it was productive.
Did they kind of outline the next steps?
I think the next step was for us to provide a narrative on each of those topics. I've got one produced. And we have yet to get those to them yet. Yeah.
Any other questions for Peter?
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I'll go on to council reports. I'll start with you, Chris, since you're on the phone.
You know, for sake of time and awkwardness of Zoom, I'm gonna sit there and save my report till next meeting, guys.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Havorka.
Only thing I have to report was I went to the Kiwanis play. It was kind of nice to see it from the audience side of life instead of the stage. You know, dressed in my own clothes and all that good stuff, so.
Not half naked.
No, nothing that could jeopardize my rich and prosperous future political careers. Right. That's all I got.
Tom?
I'll go quickly as I can, Councilman James. I attended the LMD meeting. They took in $83,052.99 in December for lodging tax. So it reflects a very strong hunting season and other projects. But 1 month, that's incredible. Right now, their cash on hand after all of their obligation is $502,383. So they have $500,000 there for council's knowledge. The Northwest Colorado Trails did present and asked for $3,000 for marketing a race series out at the moto track, and that was approved at that meeting. Also, the Yampa Valley Brewing Company asked for $3,900 to put on 3 concerts down at Alice Pleasant Park this summer. So those will be June 3rd, which is in association with the DBA food truck event, on June 7th, which is the day before Homemade Homegrown. And I mean, that's July 7th. And then August 4th is a concert just prior to the Balloon Festival. So I think that was also approved, and those are some interesting things and that should drive people to our community in the summer. The commissioners this morning, just a quick update, the courthouse is 97% complete. The outside site work will be done after the snow melts. So sometime in July, they'll be starting that project. And then Moffett County government, to overemphasize, on April 10th, will be closed that week. There will be no phone service, no internet connection, nothing that Moffett County government will have that week during the move from the old courthouse to the other. So that's right there. The other thing they approved this morning was the advancement of going for a $480,000 grant for the airport. And the airport is something we have obligations to and we'll be putting in our 24 budget, I understand. But they're going to be doing asking for runway overlay, lights, and other rehabilitation out at the airport. I was offered, and I've contacted the mayor about this, the public service hour that's available to us. I've offered to KRAI to host that, and they would broadcast it on Saturday and Sunday mornings, and we can, as council, could participate in that, talk about what's going on. I also anticipate bringing in other people around the county to have interviews. Tony St. John has indicated that he'd like to take 15 minutes of that first part for the Balloon Festival. So it'll be an opportunity for us to just get public about some of our stuff that we're doing. I did attend Club 20 on March 2nd and 3rd. The only thing I'd highlight there is the wolf issue during the agriculture discussion just dominates. And speaking personally, I wish the wolf initiative had never passed. It is going to cost the people of the state of Colorado a tremendous amount of money. I think more than anybody ever anticipated. Some of the ramifications are just ungodly. And unfortunately, it lends itself to that urban-rural divide that we seem to just be driving ourselves at. I wanted to make sure everybody knew tomorrow night, out at the pavilion, there is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is having a public comment period available at 5:30, and it's going to be an open format. It won't be presentations. It'll be you coming in, looking at maps and making comments, and the ability to learn more. But the Fish and Wildlife Service is associated with this with the 10J rule. And the 10J rule will be something that many people in rural Colorado would like to see in place, at least when the wolves are introduced. That would allow the taking of wolves if it gets to a point where they need to be hunted just like elk or deer or anything else, that kind of management tool will be available. Without the 10J, it is not going to be available. It's an endangered species, and fines for taking a wolf under any circumstances would be pretty tough. So I would just put it out there at 5:30 tomorrow at the pavilion. The wolf input will be taken by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Mr. James?
I don't have anything, but I will say I saw a wolf where they're not supposed to be, like a month and a half ago out by Meeker, because they weren't there yet, so they're lying.
Or 3 years ago in Browns Park?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, when they're like, oh yeah, because you can't reintroduce an endangered species or whatever if it already exists in a place, so that initiative is actually, like, completely illegitimate. So, it's a fun thing, but yeah, I don't have anything. I've been too busy with work. Other than that,
Cool.
Does you want to chat?
Mr. Duran?
I don't have a whole lot. Last week I attended a meeting with Mayor Hess and Heather and Peter and Tony Booyer, along with Jill Hafey, superintendent from the schools, just kind of discussing some ideas that we can present to the Ferguson group that they did yesterday, so thank you for presenting that to them. Good conversation with Jill, just finding ways that we can partner, to resolve some issues up there, hit on school safety, capital projects, because there's a big list that they have up there. And so if there's resources or small projects that we can capitalize or partner with between the city and the county and the school, then that might be something that we're gonna look to do, hopefully, because that was kind of one of our priorities when we had that discussion, that open table discussion. So from there, it sounds like we're gonna meet quarterly with the school district with those meetings and just have that conversation started. Yesterday and today, I just kind of drove through Birch Street and Woodbury just to kind of check it out, and with all the melting that we've had, and it's opened up really nice. They did a good job. I'm sure all the people down there, along with the city, but there's no water backing up, so that was good to see. Airport meeting got canceled for the month of March, and we have a planning and zoning next Monday, correct? That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Did we have charter review between?
Yeah, I had to leave town though.
That's
so
right.
I did miss that one. I should be here for the next one.
So we had charter review, and the other big meeting was with the school district. After we met about the priorities and had talked about education being something that needed help in Craig, the superintendent, of course, met with us, and it was interesting to see the perspective. Out of all the government entities that I think we've spoken with, they're the ones with the most deferred capital projects, because they were talking about replacing a roof that was leaking when I was in high school in 1999. So I think that's past, deferred maintenance. And,
It's crazy because they have
People
the
have
biggest
grandkids.
budget of like any government entity.
what's that?
They have the biggest budget of any government entity.
But the biggest expenditures per pupil.
Yeah, well, they could get rid of some admin.
So, I mean, yeah, I don't think an admin position pays for a $5 million roof, though.
Yeah, unless you have multiple redundancies and for years.
Well, school board always has openings.
As Heather likes to do. I know. She's already extended that offer. I'm like, I hate this.
Oh, come on, you enjoy it. That's really all I have. I'll open it up to you, public comment. Anybody who wants to come speak of anything related to the city, please come forward, state your name, and address your grievances towards Mr. James.
I have the same one.
I have no grievances tonight.
Oh, compliments go to Mr. Havorka.
It's good to see all of your smiling faces. I've missed you. So I'm very excited to see a lot of new businesses popping up around town. So I'm going to presume that Shannon and Peter, of course, have something to do with that, and I appreciate it. I'm really excited for things that are going on at the mall. There's a bunch of stuff going in there. The axe throwing place, I'm real excited for. Admittedly, I was a little disappointed that they won't allow me to bring my own targets, but that's okay, still good practice.
Can you imagine the cutouts?
Oh, I wasn't, I meant live targets. No cutouts. But yeah, it'll still be good practice. And again, I like to see more going in downtown would be nice. I think we need a more vibrant downtown. Get people out and spending money. I know when I get to go downtown, I spend money, so yeah. So that's it. So thank you all. And I'll make a second public comment because I just want to draw this meeting out a little longer for Paul. Special for you.
I appreciate it. I don't mind listening to you, Vicky.
All right, anybody else want to speak? Move on to public hearing. Item number 7A, consideration of a site plan approval for a 2-story commercial building located at 430 West Victory Way. Said owner of record is Tanya Hurtado, whose address is 949 Breeze Street, Craig, Colorado 81625, and Isaac Hurtado, whose address is 144 West 400 South, Jerome, Idaho. The purpose of the public comment is for anybody to speak in favor or against the proposed site plan. At the close of public hearing, we'll go into the approval part where council will have discussion on the site approval. All right, hearing no public comment, did we receive any letters or anything from anybody in the public?
We have not. Letters were sent to everyone within 300 feet of the subject property, and it was posted in the newspaper as a legal notice, and so all the postings were done for our requirements, but I have not received any comments one way or another on it.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, well, go ahead. Well, Chris is by virtual, so.
Sorry, I need the exercise since I don't get to walk outside anymore. I would like to say I am absolutely in favor of this. It's a new business. I don't know that it's a business I'll ever use myself. However, hopefully it will be beneficial to a lot of people in Craig. And for me personally, that lot has been an eyesore for years. And so I'll be really happy to see a nice building going in and business, another business. So, not that it matters that I say yes, but I say yes.
Well, thank you. All right, seeing or hearing no other public hearing or public comment, we'll move on to 8A, which is approval of the same site plan as public hearing. I would entertain a motion, and then we can go into discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Havorka, seconded by Councilman James. Further discussion on the site plan approval.
What is it?
So I can give you a little bit of a rundown. Tanya Hurtado's here. She can come up too, and you can ask her any questions you might have. So essentially, you guys know where the property is, right across from the Ocean Pearl there. And so they were responsible for removing the old abandoned gas station, been there for years. And so this building essentially is same footprint and same location as the other building, just 2 stories in this case. And so the bottom level is looking at half of it's going to be a coffee shop, essentially with a drive-through. The other half is kind of a salon spa, is what and then the upstairs is just shower rooms and storage. But it's small enough, it's under the 3,000 square foot, so you don't need ADA and elevators and all that sort of thing. But so that's what the use of the building is. And so you guys have my packet there, kind of with the breakdown of the land use code requirements and that sort of thing. It's kind of a tricky little lot, being that small and being on a corner lot. So especially they're trying to get a drive-through fit in there. So, but we meet all of the requirements for parking. Landscaping's a little tricky. That's why it's not super detailed out in the plans there, but just getting the square footage landscaping there, just because obviously you have site triangle clearances and everything on the corner there, so it kind of limits you on what you can do there, but.
So can we like lower the landscaping requirements?
So, yeah, you can see kind of in my memo there, technically by the size of the lot, subtracting the size of the building, you need 840 square foot of landscaped area. They're proposing 620 to 650 square foot around the building. If we do need to add more, it basically there is a place or two we could, it would just take away a parking spot. So there is a possibility for that, and they weren't objected to it. It's just kind of limited on where we can do stuff there, you know. They do plan on having, it only would require 2 trees and 3 shrubs, and so they do intend on having those around the perimeter of the building there. There's obviously already sidewalks on both sides. Trash disposal was another one that's a little tricky, just because with them doing a drive-through around there, there's not a convenient place for a dumpster. So they do have a dumpster, they do have an enclosure where each tenant, since they're small areas, each tenant will have their own can, and so they visited with Trevor and those guys out there to make sure that's going to work for the trash disposal. Otherwise, they had to come back. Originally, planning and zoning was just concerned about the aesthetics of the building, with it being a main intersection there. And so they came back with some of those other details I showed you there. They're not drawn, due to the sake of time, I didn't have them put them on the actual full-blown site plan, but they will be. I would say if you make a motion to approve this, it's with the stipulation that they put them on the construction drawings as far as for sure location and size, just so I can make sure it meets what planning and zoning was wanting out of it, just to kind of architecturally break up the building and that sort of thing. So anyhow, that's kind of the broad strokes of it. And so Tanya, I'm sure, can answer any other questions you have, and we can go from there.
Well, hopefully.
The only concern that I really have, and I mean, I would probably try and keep it as cost effective as possible in that area. I don't see requires a lot of landscaping just because of where it's at. I don't know how everybody else feels. But like the only thing that I would be concerned is that, you know, which I'm sure has already been thought about, but the direction of the drive-through. That's, other than that, I don't really see any problems with this at all, but.
CDOT did limit them on what they could do. Obviously, they had
no doubt that they did.
They obviously had to close off the old existing ones, which wouldn't have really worked anyway, but to Long Victory there, and so then they had to push the other one as far south as they could on Ranny. Which lines up with the drive-through. It just makes it have to kind of circumvent around and go out the same area, but.
Yeah, and there's a queue for space from the road to the drive-through, so there has to be at least a minimum of 5 cars that are allowed availability, so. For space.
And as Marlon kind of mentioned, it kind of came back and forth to P&Z a couple times, and I think the main reason why is just you had the vision in your head that first meeting,
Yeah,
and then they wanted to see it on paper, and so
yes,
you know, we have the awnings and we have the snow catch on the drive-through just because it's a slanted roof. So that was the main concern for planning and zoning. They were never too concerned about the parking or the landscape or anything, which is more the aesthetics. And the commissioner, Randy Clue, sent an email, and it sounds like you agreed to everything.
yeah.
And that's all they were concerned about.
Mr. Mayor, it's Chris.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'd just like to emphasize what Marlon said. So if you make a motion, please include the recommendations of zoning and planning as they've reviewed this site and made some recommendations on awnings and wainscoting to make sure they're part of the motion for the final record.
I believe they are included in your final site plan, aren't they?
Not initially, they're not.
Not
So-
initially, so if you could probably state that per planning and zoning revisions or something of that nature, and then,
In confirming with that revision, P&Z did not make any recommendation on any additional landscaping, just the
They did not. They did, they wanted the wainscoting the rock wainscoting to match the cornerstone and go up to pretty much the bottom of the windows all the way around the building. And then, the awnings over all the lower windows and doors is mainly what they were.
Yeah, 'cause I kind of agree with Paul on the landscaping issue. The purpose of that lot with the small lot, with a commercial purpose, is gonna be hard to get that much landscaping in there, especially with a drive-through. And I'd hate to see them not be able to put in just because of 200 square feet roughly, or 150 square
Yeah,
feet of landscaping.
and I'm not even worried about like making the updated anything. Like I feel like you guys are putting a new business here and you're gonna want it to look nice.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't feel like we even need to have any extra requirements or change anything or, you know, Craig needs businesses. So I feel like we should just get out of the way when people want to bring them here.
What are go over the planning and zoning revisions again real quick.
So they basically, just to kind of, since their original plan had essentially a metal building with metal wainscoting, and so just to kind of break it up architecturally, they recommended, required essentially some awnings over the front, which Tanya, I think, originally said was kind of a little bit of the plan. We just didn't really have, she had a vision, but she didn't have it on paper, you know what I mean? And so, and they're going to do some awnings along the lower windows. One thing that was a requirement from my standpoint is, since the roof pitches off that way, is they were going to need a substantial awning over the drive-through window just to protect customers and that sort of thing. So they'll have kind of matching ones going around the bottom windows. And so basically awnings over exterior doors and all the lower windows, and make sure there was snow stops on that one side, the drive-through, and then the stone instead of metal wainscoting on the bottom. Those were the three main requirements that they put on there as subject to
She
approval.
had submitted one drawing to P and Z at last meeting, and it had rock going up all four corners.
Yeah.
And they just wanted that wainscot to match along with that awnings, and then that's what she's provided, so, just a little aesthetics.
So, and with the, like, covering over the drive-through window, like, I mean, I see that makes sense, obviously, but, I mean, that's clearly not a requirement for any other drive-through in town.
I don't know of any that have a roof that pitches off toward the drive-through.
Okay.
Like if you're looking at,
It's because they have flat roofs.
if you're looking at
so
McDonald's,
we're
that
like,
sort of
cool,
thing,
You're
it's-
just dealing with it.
Right.
And like, that's okay.
And it would actually probably be similar to what McDonald's has. They can make it look differently, but they have the hanging awnings
Yeah.
that come out over, but they don't have any drip line. They don't have any ice or snow coming off of there, because all there is a flat roof that pitches off to the side. So we just don't want somebody to get hit by not that we'd ever get any ice or snow on a roof around here, but just in case we, so that one's more of a actual functional feature. The others would be more aesthetics.
Okay. Well, and I think what we're getting after here is we just don't want to be inhibiting people that are willing to come in and build new businesses and locking them down to meet our vision.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's
Yeah.
like what we need.
I understand. The awnings make total sense. That's a public safety kind of a thing. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So does anybody want to amend the motion to reflect the adoption of P and Z's recommendations?
I will. I'll make that motion.
All right, so the motion on the table now is an amended motion to approve the site plan with the adoption of zoning and planning, or planning and zoning's recommendations.
Second.
Okay.
Discussion.
Further discussion on the amended,
Yeah,
Does
I
that
have
affect
another
you
question.
guys? Like realistically?
Well, let me just say this. Right now, this is not obviously the time to be building. I mean, our nation is in a crisis.
Yeah.
Banks are collapsing as we speak.
Yeah.
So of course, it's going to impact everyone. Any additional pennies that you have to put toward aesthetics, of course, are going to impact a small business owner. But I'm honestly not here by choice. In 2019, I took in 5 kids under the age of 6 due to meth addiction. And the fact that I was able to keep those kids in my home for a year and a half destroyed my family and my 25-year marriage. So I had no choice. I had to make a decision to go forward with my life. My 3 children are grown. They supported me and they helped me through this process. So that's the reason why I'm here in Craig. It was the will of God for me to be here in Craig, not because I chose to be here. So I and trying to start up a business and go forward with my life. And honestly speaking, our nation's in God's hands. This project is in God's hands. So I'm fine with whatever the outcome is that you guys decide. On behalf of this city, I trust your judgment.
Careful with that in the future.
I think Chris, did you have one more question?
Yeah, I just asked Marlon, so the second floor of this building, a large percentage of it is storage. If that use ever changed, would it affect the parking requirements?
It could if it became to where there was much of an occupancy load up there. However, if there was an occupant load over 15 up there, it wouldn't technically be allowed because that's when you get into ADA requirements as of an elevator and that sort of thing. So that upper floor, which is luckily only 1,600 square foot, so it's not very large, would have to be under that occupant load to be a legal use up there. So it wouldn't. Somebody couldn't do a restaurant and have a bar up there or something like that, because obviously that would kick in more parking requirements and that sort of thing.
So if they converted those two storage rooms or three into residential area, because they have restrooms up there already, would that change the parking or?
So it is possible in our C2 zone, we do allow for residential on a second story in case that ever became
Right.
a want. Then you don't have the ADA requirements either because it's residential, single family up there. You're not dealing with commercial business. So they do have the potential for that. As far as that goes, we required 2 parking spaces per residential apartment or anything else. So if it became one apartment, it wouldn't. So yeah, it would. Based on the square footage up there, I don't see anything that could be residential in there that would have an occupant load that would increase the parking more than what's there.
Okay, thanks, Marlon.
Yeah.
Seems like a good use potentially down the
That's
road.
kind of what I was thinking too, that you got the availability for that if necessary. So I will say also, as far as the exterior, we do have code requirements if you have over a 50-foot blank wall. This building isn't because it's 40 by 50, so there's no forced requirement as far as, what I mean, that type of breakup on it. So, but
Any other further discussion?
Good.
All right, just for purposes of the vote, this is the amended motion with the recommendations of planning and zoning, and I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. It's approved.
Thank you. And summer is not going to start in July.
Thank you very much. Okay, on to 8B, resolution number 7, a resolution appropriating additional sums of funds in various funds in the amount of $274,700 for the purpose as set forth below for the city of Craig, Colorado for the 2023 budget year.
Well, council, thank you. We looked at this last work session. This represents, if you look at Katie's going to talk about and review the fund balance recaps. She does her financial report to confirm what we talked about last meeting. This represents somewhat of an inflation hedge. It also represents a single pay period and equates to 3.8% increase, a one-time increase. This is not sustained from year to year. And so we're asking council to consider this, and this is the option that you folks had determined that looked like the most likely. So this is what's been prepared.
All right, entertain a motion on resolution number 7.
I would make a motion to approve resolution number 7, 2023.
Motion by Councilman James, seconded by Councilman Duran. Further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you, council.
Welcome. On to 8C, approval of award or approval of award of bid for software upgrades to mobile equipment from eForce in the amount of $29,930.50. Mr. Conrad, or Captain Conrad, sorry.
So with the 2023 budget, we had requested a line item for upgrades to our mobile eForce that works within our records management system, which is eForce. We have received the mobile computers, which was part of our line item purchase, and they have been deployed out. All the officers are using them. And now we're at the point where we can upgrade the software to include e-mobile e-citation. This upgrade puts each officer having the ability to complete citations and summonses right from their vehicle. They print a copy for the offender right from their patrol vehicle, and once completed, it's transmitted electronically to the municipal court, which part of this is the integrated software on the city court side, so that it all works in one simple, fast program. We had budgeted for $35,000 for this upgrade. The quote that we received from eForce, and it is sole source because that is our record management system, is only $28,900. So on behalf of Chief Cochran, we're requesting to proceed with this upgrade and deployment for the eForce software.
All right, I entertain a motion on 8C.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman James, seconded by Councilman Havorka. Any further discussion? Go
I
ahead.
think, is the number different here? Yeah, this one, so on the agenda, it's coming in at 29,000.
$1,000 difference.
Yeah, there's a 28 and a 29.
I'm looking
Okay,
at the
so
quote
the actual,
at
yeah.
28,930.
The actual bid is, so yeah, should we amend that for the agenda's purpose? Hello?
Chris, kill your mic.
Not Chris. I fixed it. Yeah, so that's right, because that's the one that's on the bid, but do we need to change it for the agenda's purpose, or?
For the approval?
Yeah, or the,
What is giving feedback?
Oh, I see. I didn't see what you were talking about. No. So in the agenda, it says 29, so it's $1,000.
Right, the agenda has a different number than the bid.
yeah, that's what I was asking. So, I'm sure that the memo has the actual number.
Yeah.
Yeah, the memo's up right there, and it does request the 28,930.
Yeah, so I'm just saying for like minutes, records, agenda, do we need to change that, or is it irrelevant?
I'd say we amend it to what the bid says.
Okay, well then I would amend my motion to adjust the stated amount of $29,930.50 to the actual amount of $28,000, or $28,930.50.
All right, second the amendment.
Thank you, John.
Every time I turn mine back on, it starts singing it.
Can you use the other mic?
Try that too.
Use your big boy voice.
Yeah. All right, any further discussion on the amendment?
Nay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye. Are you bugged?
See, it's not me.
There, aye, sorry.
All right. Are you an aye?
I'm an aye.
Okay. All opposed? Nobody. All right. It's passed. On to D, no action needed for first reading of ordinance number 1141, 2023, an ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 1.08.010 of the Craig Municipal Code to include useful public service as a penalty for violation of Craig Municipal Code.
So both this action item or discussion item, as well as the following, are meant to actually add a sentencing alternative to allow for public service to be ordered as a component of city court. I've been working with Captain Conrad and Chief Cochran and Ms. Zimmerman myself, and then obviously the CSO officers will be included. But there's a lot of use for public service coming out of the court, and we're trying to, I guess, form our own useful public service through the city instead of using outside agencies. And then the goal is that especially the seasonal CSOs will be directing or supervising the public service, and we'll be able to hopefully use those folks to abate certain properties, potentially, do things like clean up trails, really kind of put them to use for the city. Statutorily, it has to be basically self-funded. So I anticipate the next meeting will have a resolution that basically authorizes us to start to charge people a fee as to their, I guess, the level of their public service hours. So what we contemplate is anybody that has 16 hours or less, it would be a $50 fee. Anything up to 24 hours would be a $100 fee. And that will go to essentially fund, things that the CSOs will need, like lawnmowers, weed eaters. I don't know about funding the actual employees themselves, but that's the goal behind making these modifications.
So Heather, is this gonna be in lieu of fines?
It can be. It's usually in addition to.
Right.
The fines candidly are pretty low that come out of municipal court. I mean, we do take into consideration where people are at financially. And financially, if it's a struggle, we'll offer a little bit more public service hours to compensate for those fines.
You should teach that to the county courts.
Do what?
I said you should teach that to the county court.
Right.
I definitely did my fair share of community service back in the day, but I think that this is a good idea. So I did read through these. I didn't see anything that was absurd, so.
No, and it only adds in the option to implement public service hours through the sentence.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the idea of people being punished for the same crime multiple times. So like if they were already gonna get like, a weekend in jail, because I recognize that it's city court, so you're probably not seeing a lot of those 180 days very often out of there. But I don't like just adding this on. That's kind of my only thing. I think that, you do a crime, you get punished once. And that's kind of where I see that. I understand like with the fines, you have to cover court costs and things like that. But I mean, that is kind of the only stipulation that I would have is,
So what I'll tell you is if folks are repeat offenders into municipal court, that's when, things start to compound for them.
well, and if you're a repeat offender, then you didn't learn your lesson.
Right. If they're a first-time offender, you're not getting killed coming through the municipal court. I mean, the offers are very reasonable. It's a standard first offer for everybody. But, you can, for instance, if kids are caught, let's say, vaping at the school. So they're going to have a minimal fine, right, because they're going to be charged with MIP. But then we also like them to do some useful public service hours for the school district specifically.
Okay.
And so I think the fine is like $30, and then they complete an education, a tobacco education class, and things of that nature. But it's really a good tool to use in addition to. But certainly we do work with people if financially they're struggling and they would like to opt to do more public service versus a fine.
Cool. Okay. That's pretty much my concern, so.
Yeah,
And you're welcome to come to court Wednesday mornings.
You know what? That's like the only court I haven't been in. I'd like to stay out, thank you.
No, you should come in, yeah.
There's court.
Used to be a little rough back in the
I've been
day.
to that.
But you learn.
Yes, and we
Took a
don't,
while.
there's nothing in our code that has any minimum mandatories like the state, where, for example, in DUI, you have to do 24 hours of useful public service, and you have to do a $500 fine for your
No.
first offense. So none of our
It's
stuff does that,
discretionary.
which makes a big difference because we can craft our own punishments. So makes it kind of nice. All right, there's no action on D. Any further discussion? On to E, first reading of ordinance number 1142, an ordinance amending Title IX, Chapter 9.04.010 of the Craig Municipal Code to include useful public service as a penalty for violation of city code. And this kind of echoes the first one.
Same as
Cool.
So moved.
All right, any discussions? Yeah.
It is supposed to be first reading. I think did you say that or not?
Yes, first reading.
I think you did.
Yeah, no action.
That would be action.
But I think you have to vote.
Oh, there is a first reading.
Yeah, for the
Oh,
first
that's
reading,
right.
we,
That's right. So on D, introduction, first reading, we combine those two now. I'm just thinking a year back. So let's go back to D. Entertain a motion on the approval of the first reading of D.
So moved.
second.
Motion by Councilman Havorka, seconded by Councilman James. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? He's a yay, so we're good. On to E, entertain a motion on first reading.
Aye, so moved.
It's because we backtracked.
Right.
It's fine.
Yeah, well, because we used to do just introduction,
Yeah.
no ans, and then we
Yep.
started doing the two
Gotcha.
together.
But
I
they've
forget
been
that every time.
combined.
So moved by James, seconded by Councilman Havorka. Did I hear that right? Or
Is that what we did?
vice
No,
versa?
I think it's the other way.
Okay, moved by Havorka, seconded by Councilman James. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. First reading. So next time we'll have a public hearing and final. Just remind me of that stuff. On to, I just saw the introduction part. On to public comment number 2. Vicky, if you'd like to come forward and talk.
Hey, me again.
Yeah.
Could you
I'll
say
talk slow for Paul so I can stretch this out a little longer.
The shortest one we've ever had, so let's.
we're 9 minutes away?
I'm not looking for any records. I love the useful public service. Thank you. I hope that continues to pass through. I've long said that we need to do that. Thank you for approving more for the police department. I love our law enforcement, which is weird for me, but I do. I love them. As I grow older, I realize how important they are.
It's a compliment, Doug.
It is.
You don't have to talk like that just because Doug's sitting right there.
Oh, I know. Well, people that know me from my earlier years are like, really?
I can
You like the
relate to
cops
that.
now? So, because, I grew up in the era of Big Brother brings me down, but I don't feel that way anymore. There was something else, more important. Oh, the bonus, the bonus for the city workers. Thanks. As a taxpayer, I'm happy to put my money towards that. I think when somebody is doing a good job, you should show them that you appreciate their worth, that you value them, and then maybe they will continue to be good workers and stay in their job longer. So, well, I can say some things about some city workers, but I'm
Yeah,
not
it's a
going to
different,
because
he's not talking about that.
yeah. Well, I mean, I could. The Road and Bridge Department's done a great job this winter, and I really appreciate that. Again, I could list a whole lot of aggravations and frustration over that, but I have not complained even once because I appreciate, I keep hearing that they start at like 6:30 in the morning. I'm telling you, it's 4:30.
Yeah. I
It's
think it is.
4:30.
I've heard him out there pretty early.
They wake me up, and I get up then, so I know it's 4:30. And that's fine. I'm not at all complaining.
The new 4:30 is the old 3:30.
Oh, okay. Yeah, got it. Well, it's been like that all winter, so but it's been good. They've done a good job. I think I'm gonna have a little extra cleanup in the spring, and that's okay too. I'm not complaining at all. So I just want to say thanks for all of that, and all you guys, and all you do, and don't do. I stretch it out loud. I just can't.
Paul's like, we almost made it in an hour. All right, thank you. Anybody else, public comment? Not seeing any. Going to staff reports, Police Department, Captain Conrad.
So to start out, we have one cadet or one officer that completed the academy in December. He is in his final phase of field training program. We still have 2 cadets down in the academy in Flat Rocks in Adams County. They're due to graduate June 2nd. and they will start FTO probably around the middle of June. Expected to be done approximately 3 months after that, and be out on their own. As mentioned before, the computers, the mobile computers have all been deployed out to the field. They are using them. They have FirstNet connectivity so that they can be used all over town. The need for going back to the office to do reports is being reduced highly. So with that, speeding citations, you can see is remaining pretty constant. Big increase over a year ago at this date. Biggest of note, DUI arrests continue to be on the increase. Even compared to a year ago, up over 150% year to date. But just in the month of February alone, that's 9. That's quite a bit for a small city as this. Other offenses and traffic citations down. Traffic crashes are running pretty standard. 1917 compared to this time last year. Persons crimes are down for the month of February as opposed to January. And with an increase over last year's year to date. Crimes against property running pretty standard again. Drug violations. Adult arrests down February from January, and total calls for service down a small 7% for the patrol division. Investigations, they've added on a couple of cases as opposed to January from February. And looking down into code enforcement, calls were down as well. February is a pretty cold month, so it's about all I can contribute to the major portion of that. And then page 3, you're looking at the shelter fees, which have also been down February from January, both city and county.
I like the county's number better.
What?
The county has a better number.
That they do.
You guys will avoid taking dogs at shelter.
Ow. They don't do cats.
Wonder why.
I might mention that we picked up 54 deer in town this year.
54.
Yeah, that was the total.
Sick?
So far. Most
Or
of those,
just dead?
Yes.
most of those were hit by automobiles, I'm guessing.
I've seen quite a few that just dropped.
I've
Yeah.
noticed they look super sick this year.
Mm-hmm.
I had a DOW guy shoot one in my yard one time. He came up and he was like, hey, I'm going to shoot a deer. And I was like, okay. He's like, what's in your yard? And I was like, great.
We tased one.
It's a whole story. You tased a deer?
Yeah, so they could put it down. Because it was right next to a building. Yeah, just throwing it out.
All right, economic development.
All right. Any questions for Doug?
Thanks, Doug.
I tried to make it quick for you.
Dude, I love it. I just appreciate your service. Here and out there.
Shannon, on to 11B, Economic Development Annual Report.
Yes, so you all should have a copy of the 2022 Economic Development Annual Report. All the information was actually presented at the December meeting, so I'm not going to go through this too thoroughly, but just wanted to give you all an idea of what the professional printouts are going to look like. We're actually going to get these printed out, I think 200 or 250 copies. So our plan obviously is to be able to have these to distribute locally. We'll also have this posted to our new website. But I didn't want to get too much into the weeds with this unless any of you guys had any questions about it. And if not, I'll just move right into my Q1 report for 2023. We are still working through our Brownfield Assessment Grant. In January, we did conduct the Phase 2 environmental assessments at the Spicy Basil and the 406 Yampa Avenue properties, as well as the Phase 1 assessments at the old hospital site and the Woodbury property that we've identified for potential housing development. And as a result of those Phase 1s, there were no environmental contaminants to be concerned about, so that did not warrant a Phase 2 assessment for either of those two properties. We are continuing to work through our Economic Development Advisory Committee meetings. We host those the fourth Monday of every month at 9 a.m. Very impressed with the productivity of that group. Some of the notable things that we've been working on in the last couple of months, obviously we were given some guidance to focus on marketing efforts, so we're working through creating the new economic development website. That should hopefully be done by the end of March or beginning of April. The new URL for that is discovercraig.com. I believe that was announced at the last council meeting. We did place an ad in the OEdit Business Comes to Life publication, and that is included in the annual report. I think it's the first to last page. That ad was paid for by AGNC's. They had some extra marketing dollars, so that did not come out of our marketing fund. And then we also did a magazine article in Business in Focus magazine that was paid for by some local sponsorships that talked about our 2025 transition plan. So again, with the website, we're hoping to have that up and running in 2 to 3 weeks. The firm that we've selected hopes to be back in Craig in the summer and fall, I believe, to conduct some testimonials from local business owners and do some photography and videography, hopefully when the snow melts and we have some better weather. Just wanted to give an update on our Rural Transit Authority. So we received a grant from CDOT back in the fall of last year in conjunction with Steamboat Springs and Routt County. So we're currently working through that process of looking at a feasibility study for kind of that 40 corridor there between here and Steamboat. Looking through all modes of transportation, so whether that's vehicle, bus, bike, trails, you name it, rail. We're working through that to see kind of what some opportunities could come of that. And had 2 stakeholder meetings, two project team meetings so far, and then the next step is that they'll be conducting stakeholder interviews with some of our local partners, I believe at the end of March. That pretty much hits the high points. I continue to attend the monthly AGNC, NWCDC, LMD, of course, the RTA, and chamber meetings. So with that, that concludes my Q1 report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, hearing none, thank you very much. Katie, Financial Department 2022 year-end report.
Actual to actual. Nobody's made that in like 6 months, I feel like.
We'll get there. I think I'll get at least one in there.
Gotta reuse the old material.
So these financial statements, I think that you guys probably saw some of this data at the workshop at the last meeting, but they represent a preliminary year-end close. The numbers are obviously still unaudited, and they'll change slightly, but all the entries of significance, I think, to this point have been made. So this is a good representation of the final closeout numbers for 2022. For fund balance recaps, I'll touch on that first. All funds within the city maintained or grew fund balances in 2022. General fund balance started at 11.9 million and ended the year at 17. Capital projects fund balance started at 453,000 and ended the year at 478,000. The museum fund started at 272,000 and ended the year at 379,000. Medical benefits fund did decrease, but that was by design. That started at 605,000 and ended the year at 364,000. Water started at 6.2 and ended the year at 6.1 million. Wastewater fund started at 2.6 and ended at 3 million. Solid waste fund balance started at 2.1 and ended the year at 2 million. On the expenditure side in the general fund, 90% of the O&M budget was spent. All departments are at or below the budgeted amounts for 2022. Only 26% of the capital expenditures were spent from the 2022 budget. But many of the projects were rebudgeted during the 2023 budget cycle. In particular, a couple of those major ones that made up for that big percentage difference there were the solar project and the Yampa River Corridor project. As indicated during last year's budget process, we did away with the carryover process, putting an emphasis on the department heads to really gauge what projects would or wouldn't be complete during the year, so that we could do away with that shock factor that sometimes came with that carryover ordinance at the first of the year. So no carryover ordinance this year. Yeah, so that was a really good job. I think it really worked well. I think it made for a much better depiction of what our budget actually looks like for the year. I'm not going to go through the individual department totals compared to budget. But overall, the actual O&M expenditures for 2022 are more than 2021 by about $227,000 or 2%, and under budget by $1,068,000 or 10%. Total expenditures in the general fund came in at $12.3 million compared to the budget of $21.1 million and prior year of $12.9 million. Individual accounts with significant variances, favorable or unfavorable, I have noted in this packet, so you guys can look over those. Many of those items will come in handy when it comes time for next year's budget, when we're looking at variances for prior years. For the general fund revenues, uh, 84% of the budget revenues have been received. $3.378 million under budgeted revenues. Again, that's in large part due to those grant fundings on those big projects that didn't happen yet. We are 16% or $2.468 million increase from prior year. So some of the significant variations in general fund balance for the general fund revenues that had growth in taxes. Total taxes came in at 117% of budget and 111% of prior year at $13.2 million. Property tax saw an increase of about $66,000 or 5%. County sales tax had an increase of $218,000 or 12%, and city sales tax increased 12% or just over $1 million. Those increases could really be in large part attributed just to inflation. And then we still have some of the remote sellers that we're still having some of those continue to get registered and start collecting or remitting taxes. Licenses and permits came in at 155% of budget, 93% of prior year at just under 190,000. The major increases there were in building permits for both the county and the city. When we're looking at the grant revenue, again, this is where we didn't hit the budget numbers because of those large projects. 35% of budget, but we were still 144% increase from the prior year. So the projects not being completed, and then we also had one that I did mention earlier, that CDS housing funding, that project's not been completed either. In addition, with the intergovernmental revenues, the federal mineral lease and severance taxes came in significantly higher than budgeted at $568,000 and $664,000 respectively. And we also expended in the general fund about $926,000 of the ARPA funding. So you also see that number represented in these financials. Under charges for services, they came in at 102% of the budget and 106% of the prior year at $284,000. Fines and costs, 128% of budget at 65,000, and about a 66% or 26,000 increase over prior year. Miscellaneous revenue came in way over budget and prior year at the 390,000, mostly because of just the change in the interest rates throughout the year. So overall, revenues for 2022 are up by 16%, or about 2.4 million over 2021, and 16% less than budget, or 3.3 million. And expenditures are down 5%, or 590,000 over 2021, and 42% less than budget, or 8.8 million under, because of those large projects. Fund balance for the general fund started the year with 11.9 million, 8.6 million was unreserved. Current fund balance is 17 million, and 13.7 of that is unreserved.
We should reserve it. For a rainy day. We don't have any of those coming up though, right?
No. Nothing but sunshine.
On to other funds. The capital project fund, budget to actual revenues came in at 108% of budget, with an increase in specific ownership tax of 6,200 compared to budget. Expenditures were at 99% of budget at 155,000.
What is a specific ownership tax?
It's on vehicles. It's part of the registration taxes that you pay on your vehicles.
Cool. Weird name for it.
I didn't name it.
I know, I'm just.
It's all my fault. The museum budget to actual, maybe I won't get an actual to actual. I'm sure somewhere it's in there somewhere. The museum budget to actual revenues came in at 122% of budget at 536,000. Fundraising donations exceeded budgeted amount by over 7,000. Non-walk-in donations exceeded budget by a little over 25,000. And there was a memorial donation that came in for 47,000. Expenditures came in at 95% of the budget at 429,000. Already covered the fund balance there. Medical benefits fund revenues came in at 94% of budget. Expenditures came in at 97% of budget. And there's a graph in there on the water sales throughout the year. Charges for metered services for the water fund came in about 95% of budget at 3.1 million, and unmetered water sales exceeded budget, coming in 135% or 128,000. This summer it was a wetter summer. People didn't go through as much water. Again, in this fund, grant revenues are coming in significantly under budget because of project completion times. But along with that, the capital expenditures are also coming in significantly under budget. The water operating expenditures were at 91% or 2.2 million of budgeted expenditures. Wastewater fund. Charges for services came in at 101% of budget at 2.0 million. Grant revenues in this fund also came in significantly under budget because of project completion timing. And we also had some that came in under budget, just the projects in general in that fund. Along with that, the capital expenditures are coming in significantly under budget. Operating expenditures were at 97% or 1.292 million. And solid waste fund. Solid waste revenues came in at 111% of budget at 1.9 million. Construction dumpsters exceeded the budget revenues by about 78,000 at $266,000. Charges for services by 25,000 at 803,000, and landfill fees by $51,000 at $792,000. Their operating expenditures came in at 103% or 1.66 million of budget expenditures. And I already covered the fund balance. Do you guys have any questions on end of year preliminary?
Like we did great, that's good.
That's a good year.
The department's did a great job this year. And those big projects coming up in '23 this year, we won't have near the match on those projects because of additional revenues that have been developed through different grant opportunities. So,
With all the cost increases for the expenditures to only go up 250,000 in the general fund's pretty impressive.
That's amazing.
Still think we should cut the sales tax a little bit. But we're never gonna agree on that, so.
Paul, we've already taken it off of diapers, I think that would help you out a little bit.
I'm more concerned about people being able to afford food, but.
I vote for you.
Get up here.
Right, any other questions for Katie? I'm just saying, if you got anything going. All right, hearing none, thank you, Katie, we appreciate that. Any closing remarks? Nope, nobody's got any. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.